Pope Francis holds historic meeting with senior Shiite cleric in Iraq. Millions of Ivorians head to the polls to choose new members of parliament. And more African countries receive COVID-19 vaccines. Hello and welcome to TeleSUR. I'm Doris Polo in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the South. Pope Francis has held a meeting with Shiite top cleric Grand Ayatollah Ali Sistani in a landmark moment in modern religious history. The two respected men of religion met at or in the shrine city of Najaf early on Saturday, the second day of the first ever papal visit to Iraq. The meeting marked the first time a pope has met with such a senior Shiite cleric. The 84-year-old pontiff is defying a second wave of coronavirus cases and renewed security fears to make a long-awaited trip to Iraq, aiming to comfort the country's ancient Christian community while also deepening his dialogue with other religions. And speaking during an interfaith service, Pope Francis called for peace and coexistence in the world.
Peace does not demand winners or losers, but rather brothers and sisters who, for all the misunderstandings and hurts of the past, are journeying from conflict to unity. Let us ask for this in praying for the whole Middle East. Here, I think especially of neighboring war-torn Syria. Hostility, extremism, and violence are not born of a religious heart. They are betrayals of religion. We believers cannot be silent when terrorism abuses religion.
Now, thousands of Palestinian citizens of Israel have took to the streets on Friday to protest against the police's failure to stem a rising tide of violence in Arab communities. Following a wave of violence that has led to the death of 20 Palestinians in the last 20 months, the inhabitants of Al-Fam city decided to demonstrate en masse against police officers who they accuse of working with criminal organizations. Security forces responded with rubber bullets, stun grenades, and water cannons, injuring dozens of protesters, including the mayor of the city. Shifting gears now, the trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, charged with murdering African-American George Floyd, will begin as scheduled on March 8th. The killing sparked protests and unrest across the United States, with the shootings and deaths of other African Americans by police, including Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky, have led to strong calls for justice and an end to police brutality and systemic racism. Chauvin's former colleagues, charged as accomplices, will stand trial on August 23rd. Floyd's death, captured on video, outraged Americans and many across the world, leading to millions taking to the streets to demand police reform. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby announced that the U.S. Department of Defense is reviewing a request to have National Guard troops remain at the Capitol. This comes after the acting chief of the U.S. Capitol Police appealed to congressional leaders to back her request to keep troops protecting the building and lawmakers for another 2 months.
As I said, we're in receipt of it. We're evaluating it, and we're going to treat it just like any other request for assistance that we get. Reviewing it with an eye towards whether we can meet the demand, whether the requirements are all valid, and then on what timeline and in what sourcing. And that process, it just came in last night, so we're working very quickly at that, mindful of the 12 March deadline for the current mission.
We do have more stories coming up. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Venezuelan authorities on Friday gathered at the Cuartel de la Montana in Caracas, the barracks where Hugo Chavez's remains lie, to mark the 8th anniversary of the former leader's death. After a tribute by the National Bolivarian Armed Forces earlier in the day, political figures gathered to pay tribute to Comandante Hugo Chavez, who is remembered not only in Venezuela but across Latin America and the rest of the world for his contribution to the struggle for social justice, equality, progress, and against imperialism and its devastating consequences for the peoples of the world. Hugo Chavez burst onto the national political scene on February 4, 1992, when he assumed responsibility for the events of that day, during which the movement he led sought to topple the neoliberal exclusionary government. His phrase recognizing defeat, but not noting the objectives had not been met, por ahora, or for now, became a rallying call for those seeking justice and change in the country. He came to power as president in 1999 and led the transformation of Venezuela through the Bolivarian Revolution, giving a voice to the huge majority of the country previously excluded and silenced. His memory lives on today across the world, where his solidarity, humanism, and example continues to inspire millions.
We have the satisfaction of having accompanied him from different battlefronts, all of us who are here from different battlefronts. The youngest people from the school, from high school, from the neighborhood. The less young from the community, from the streets, from the parliament, from the governorates, from the mayor's office, from the national government. Having accompanied him from the home, from the family, we have the satisfaction of having seen a nation awaken under his eternal rebellion of February the 4th, 1992. We have the satisfaction as a generation of having seen the construction of this powerful revolutionary and Bolivarian social movement. He asked us for unity, that in any circumstance we must know how to maintain unity and the spirit of this homeland above all circumstances. If we truly love Hugo Chavez, if we cherish Hugo Chavez, we are obliged to obey Hugo Chavez. March the 5th, Commander, here we are on March the 5th, honoring you, who deserves honor. We wish you were not where you are, but we know that in spite of being here, at this site, when we see the smile of a child in the street, there is the smile of Hugo Chavez. In the gaze of a man, of a woman, there is Hugo Chavez. In the family embrace, Commander Hugo Chavez is there. Hugo Chavez is present across the entire homeland, now and forever. Commander, eternal loyalty to your memory and your legacy, ever onward to victory, Comandante.
In Bolivia, diplomatic authorities paid tribute to the leader of the Bolivarian Revolution. At a ceremony held at the Venezuelan embassy in La Paz, Bolivian and Venezuelan diplomats honored the memory of the eternal commander. Meanwhile, human rights defenders and representatives of social movements recalled Chavez's legacy, including his struggle for the integration of Latin America and the Caribbean and for the self-determination of the peoples of the world. Well, the people of Cuba also paid tribute to Commander Chavez at an event held at the headquarters of the Cuban Institute of Friendship with the People. The ambassador of Venezuela in Cuba and brother of Commander Chavez, Adam Chavez, highlighted the eternal legacy of the Venezuelan revolutionary. He also recalled the brotherhood between the commanders Chavez and Fidel Castro, who united in the struggle for the integration of the world. Moving on, millions of people in Ivory Coast are voting in parliamentary elections 5 months after a presidential election that was marked by violence. More than 1,500 candidates are vying for the votes of roughly 7 million people in a contest for the 255-seat National Assembly. In contrast to the bloodshed that marked the October 31st presidential polls, campaigning has been as peaceful. All the candidates have pledged support for peaceful elections and signed up to a code of conduct. According to opinion polls, President Alassane Ouattara's rally of Hypothesis for Democracy and Peace is expected to win an absolute majority of the seats. Senegalese police clashed with protesters in several neighborhoods of the capital Dakar on Friday, including in front of a courthouse where an opposition leader made his first appearance since his arrest on a rape charge. A lawyer for Ousmane Sonko said he was being charged with rape and making threats, allegations that have led to clashes since his arrest on Wednesday between his supporters and police officers in several towns. 4 people have died in the violence. Sonko has denied wrongdoing and says accusations are part of a pattern by the authorities of making up criminal charges to block opponents from standing in elections.
I support our comrade Ousmane Sonko. For me, it's a plot and it is a victory. But it has nothing to do with the luring and seeing. So promoting democracy has nothing to do with acts of delinquency. We have really built an emerging commune, and we have done enough promotion and openness to allow investors to come to the Medina, the Chinese and the French Ocean, so we don't allow bandits to come from elsewhere to plunder the Medina.
Meanwhile, the Senegalese government has accused Sonko of calling for an insurrection and vowed to use all means necessary to restore order and calm in the country.
On the other hand, Ousmane Sonko, has through repeated messages issued calls to violence, insurrection, and the weakening of the authority of the state. These acts of provocation, unprecedented and without parallel, with support of identified occult forces, provoked violent demonstrations in several neighborhoods of the capital and in other localities of the country.
We're taking one last break, but we'll be right back. Welcome back. In Somalia, at least 20 people were killed and 40 injured after a bomb exploded in the capital, Mogadishu. According to authorities, the incident occurred when a rickshaw loaded with explosives hit a popular restaurant near the capital's port. The attack was claimed by the Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab group. Mogadishu was regularly targeted with attacks by Al-Shabaab, which has been waging a long and violent insurgency seeking to unseat the country's internationally backed government. In Kenya, teams from the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization are using small planes to spray pesticide after a vast swarm of desert locusts hit the central region of the country. The UN has warned that about 3.5 million people in the wider region could be impacted by the new wave of locusts by May.
Now, when we look at the magnitude of the problem, it's much bigger than an outbreak, and it's an upsurge. And so that's really the second biggest intermediate level of infestation that is spreading across the entire region, from Sudan to Somalia to Kenya. So there are 8-9 countries in the region, and then in Yemen, where we have massive infestation of desert locusts since now 18 months, frankly speaking.
In some positive news, Kenya started rolling out its COVID-19 vaccination program on Friday after receiving over 1 million doses of the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine on Wednesday through the COVAX facility. The health minister said the vaccines will be administered to some 400,000 medical workers, and the rest will go to other frontline workers such as teachers and police officers. While the COVAX initiative was created to ensure that low and middle income countries receive COVID-19 jabs, it has faced delays and limited supply, forcing other African countries to seek more doses elsewhere, including via bilateral deals. The African Union is pursuing bulk deals for the continent, but also has faced delays.
Vaccine nationalism is something that we should all abhor. We are very clear, and I think if you ask any expert, there is no single country that will be able to be safe unless all of us are safe. So we all have an obligation to ensure that this vaccine is made available as widely, as cheaply, and as quickly as possible to all citizens of the globe.
Speaking of vaccines, Uganda has received the first shipment of 864,000 doses of the AstraZeneca shot through the COVAX facility as well. The shipment delivered by Emirates Airline was received at Entebbe International Airport by the Minister of Health, the U.S. ambassador to the country, and the representative of the World Health Organization, among other diplomats. Uganda aims to vaccinate 20% of its population.
This is just the beginning of our journey to vaccinate an estimated 22 million persons against COVID-19, including the refugee populations. Further information on the vaccination schedules for the rest of the population will be provided from time to time as we receive more vaccines.
Evidence has shown the vaccine, including this AstraZeneca vaccine, to be able to prevent deaths of COVID almost 100%. I repeat, death is prevented at a level of 100%, and it is safe for all age groups above 18. The COVAX facility, which WHO, UNICEF, and other partners are members, has allocated over 3.5 million doses of AstraZeneca vaccine for Uganda, and the remaining over 2.6 million doses are expected before June.
Now, on the anniversary of the first recorded positive COVID-19 case in South Africa, healthcare workers are starting to get immunized against the novel coronavirus. South Africa only started coronavirus vaccinations in the last 2 weeks, but President Cyril Ramaphosa says the country is moving forward with more than 67,000 health workers inoculated in the first 10 days as part of the first stage. But experts are worried that the country will experience a third wave before the vaccines have reached a sizable portion of the population.
Everybody, especially us, the frontliners, we witnessed how the second wave really devastated the society. So I wouldn't like to go through that again. So I'd really encourage everybody to give it a chance and vaccinate so that the frontliners are protected. Before we go and protect our community, we ourselves have to be quite protected.
I'm excited to get the vaccine for the protection because I go to the hospital almost every day, so I'm pretty much kind of like I'm the first person to come into contact with the patient before they do the COVID protocol and all that. So me getting the vaccine kind of helps me in a way.
In other news, a bus carrying dozens of Ukrainian citizens crashed in Poland, killing 6 and injuring 41, Polish media reported on Saturday. The accident occurred near the town of Jaroslaw in southeastern Poland, near the border with Ukraine. The bus rolled off an embankment and into a ditch. A large rescue operation was launched early on Saturday, involving dozens of firefighters, paramedics, and helicopters. Ukrainians regularly travel to Poland for work. They fill gaps in the labor market, which has experienced fast economic growth in recent years.
The consular services of Ukraine were informed about the accident. Efficient action meant that the time of assistance and the care of people who did not require hospitalization was exemplary.
Massacre. It was massacre. The bus lost control and went out of the way. It was very horrible.
On that note, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for TeleSUR English. I am Doris Bolo. Thanks for watching.